I would like to talk about free thinking today, or more specifically, 4 factors that can distort thinking: moral instincts, cognitive biases, logical fallacies, and worldviews. And then I'm going to talk about some solutions or things we can do to think better. Number 1, moral instincts. You know how your computer comes with pre-installed software? Well, your brain comes with pre-installed moral instincts, like loyalty, authority, empathy, equality, fairness, justice, helpfulness, integrity, discipline, self-control, delayed gratification. These are genetically linked abilities and instincts, but they can be nurtured or suppressed by environmental factors. Remember these old cameras? You could set them up for portrait, landscape, action, etc. But you could also set it to manual and then adjust the shutter speed, lens opening, and focus for a unique situation. Instincts are like that. You have basic reactions, but you may need to fine-tune your response to a situation. Animals have some of the same instincts. Dogs feel loyalty and respect for authority. Conservatives also value loyalty and authority. Liberals value equality more. Morals reflect what you value, and evolution makes you value your genes. If you have children, you probably value them more than anything. So that's in the center of the circle. You care about your extended family less than your children, and your community less, country less, race, species. Reciprocity is another instinct that affects our thinking. This lady gives you a free sample in the grocery store, and you feel obligated to buy something, returning the favor. One thought experiment that helps us see our moral instincts is the trolley problem. Suppose a bad guy tied some people to a railroad track and then unhooked this trolley and sent it rolling down the track. It's going to run over these 5 guys, but you happen to be standing next to the lever. You can pull the lever and the trolley will switch tracks and kill only 1 person instead of 5. Would you pull the lever? Well, most people would. Now, let me change this story a little. Suppose a bad guy tied 5 people to the track and sent the trolley rolling toward them. You are standing on a bridge next to a large man, and if you push the man off the bridge, you'll stop the trolley from killing these 5 guys. Would you push the man off the bridge? Most people say they would not, and they have reasons. They say it's murder, it's not their fault, 5 guys are tied to the track, etc. They rationalize, but the reality is that they feel differently about killing somebody who's up close, pushing them off a bridge. It feels different from pulling a lever. So in Germany, when people see this "don't walk" sign, they don't walk, even if it's the middle of the night and there are no cars. That's not true in America. They walk if they can. Why? Well, instincts like deference to authority and collectivism, etc. Yes, they have a genetic link, and so there could be some variability in different areas, different races. But cultures also evolve to nurture or suppress instincts, so that those instincts become stronger or weaker, whatever. Okay, so the next factor that affects thinking is cognitive biases. Your worst battle is between what you know and what you feel. What would you rather have if you didn't have to worry about being healthy? Kale or cheesecake? most people would rather have the cheesecake because we evolved to crave high-calorie foods back when calories were hard to come by. But now, most people are eating too many calories. Wouldn't it be nice if our instinct was to eat the kale? The instinct that we have is not helpful in our new environment, so it's a vestigial instinct. Like this ostrich has wings that evolved for it to fly, but then it found itself in a place with no predators. It no longer needed that ability, so the wings are vestigial. Another vestigial instinct that we no longer want is racism, which is an instinct that's part of speciation. Back before 1967, interracial marriage was illegal in some states because of racism. That's an instinct that we no longer value. So there are hundreds of cognitive biases listed in Wikipedia, and I'm going to talk about some of these vestigial instincts. This television, which normally costs $1,200, is now on sale for $750. But the first number that you hear, 1200, that's the anchor number, and 750 is lower than the anchor. This is the anchoring bias, which has been used to manipulate you many times. Confirmation bias is when you have a theory or a belief, and you look for evidence that supports your theory and avoid evidence that conflicts with your theory. This is part of the reason that we are politically polarized. Okay, I have 4 pairs of idioms or old sayings that contradict each other. Out of sight, out of mind. That's the opposite of absence makes the heart grow fonder. What I'm showing here is that we have wise old sayings that say whatever you want them to say. We cherry pick them for our needs. The pen is mightier than the sword. That's the opposite of actions speak louder than words. What you see is what you get is the opposite of don't judge a book by its cover. Birds of a feather flock together is the opposite of opposites attract. So you've heard this, penny wise and dollar foolish. Some people cut coupons but waste money on large purchases. It's similar to don't win the battle and lose the war, or he can't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes we get focused on the small details and fail to give enough attention to the big picture goal. Okay, this cartoon shows the survivorship bias. This guy is standing on stage in front of a group of people, the press, and he's surrounded by bags of money, and he says, "Never stop buying lottery tickets no matter what anyone tells you. I failed again and again, but I never gave up. I took extra jobs and poured money into the tickets, and here I am, proof that if you put in the time, it pays off." So we always see interviews and read books about the success stories, and it skews our perception about what is possible or what's likely. Okay, the sunk cost fallacy. Here, a young couple is out watching a movie, and the girl says, "Let's get out of here. This is the worst movie I've ever seen." And her boyfriend says, "I don't think so. These tickets were expensive." So after you've already wasted money on the tickets, well, then watching the horrible movie, besides, that's just like an additional cost to what was already spent on the ticket, right? Okay, attractive people are perceived to be smarter, funnier, and more likable than less attractive people. Do something, do anything. Whenever something bad happens, we expect our boss or our leaders to do something. Like someone falls on the sidewalk and suddenly we have a law, no walking on the sidewalk. So often the new policy or the new law makes things worse. There's an old Aesop fable called The Fox and the Grapes. The fox jumps up to get the grapes, and it can't jump that high, and it keeps jumping and jumping and jumping. Finally, it gives up, and it says, well, those grapes are probably sour anyway. So, maybe the fox should have asked someone for help or used a ladder or something, but it just justifies it. People do that a lot. Okay, what is the rule here? What's the rule that is demonstrated by these numbers? 2, 4, 8, 16. Okay, the next number is 17. And the rule is that each number is bigger than the one on its left. So you think you saw a pattern, but you didn't. If you're old enough, you probably remember that back in 1987, baby Jessica was stuck in a well, and a rescue team worked around the clock to get her out. In that same year, 24,000 Americans were killed by drunk drivers. You probably don't remember that story. It's not a good story. Good stories get our attention and impact our beliefs. But we probably should pay more attention to the statistics. Some people have a really good ability to recognize patterns, and some have trouble seeing patterns. It's a bell curve. Some people have a good ability to analyze what patterns mean, and some people can't make sense of patterns. If you have a good ability to see patterns, but a poor ability to make sense of those patterns, then you might be a conspiracy theorist. Another reason people like to believe in conspiracies is because they feel like they have special knowledge that other people don't have. A third factor that affects our thinking that I'd like to discuss is logical fallacies. Many logical fallacies are listed on Wikipedia. Okay, here's one of my favorite logical fallacies. Denying the antecedent. Okay, follow this logic. If Hunter passed the final exam, then he passed the class. Hunter did not pass the final exam. Therefore, Hunter did not, what? Pass the class, right? That's not necessarily the case. He could have failed the final exam, but still passed the class if he did really good on his other assignments. It doesn't say, if and only if Hunter passed the final exam, then he passed the class. So, that can be confusing. Okay, begging the question. That's when you make an argument that starts with the conclusion, or with an assumption that makes the conclusion inevitable. Like, okay, number 1, it is immoral to kill people. 2, capital punishment kills people. Therefore, 3, capital punishment is immoral. So you're sort of starting with the conclusion. Here's another. The napkin religion is the one true religion because it says so right here on this napkin. Alright, the straw man fallacy. How-to guide. Step 1, ignore the real argument. Step 2, create a pretend argument. Step 3, defeat the pretend argument. Step 4, claim victory over the real argument. And 5, do a victory dance. So if you normally watch Fox or you normally watch MSNBC, switch over and watch the other network for a while. And you will see that they often misrepresent the arguments that the other side makes for some policy or whatever. That's the straw man fallacy. Okay, argument from authority. Because I said so, that's why. Something's not necessarily true just because your dad said it, or you're the governor or the president. America, love it or leave it. So this t-shirt presents 2 options, but there are more options. If you don't love it, maybe you can fix it. So people often present two choices or two possibilities as if those are the only two options, when there are actually more. All right, that can't be true because you're an idiot. We see a lot of name calling in politics nowadays. Apparently that is effective reasoning for some people. Here's a graph that shows that the consumption of sour cream increased until 2005, and then it dipped, and now it's slowly declining. That's the green line. The blue line shows the same exact thing happened with the number of motorcycle riders that were killed in non-collision transport accidents. So it looks like there's a clear connection between these two things. What's going on? Are motorcycles slipping on sour cream? No, so correlation is not causation. And the last factor that affects decisions that I want to discuss is worldviews, which are fundamental beliefs about reality. Here's a group of Amish people, and you can see that their worldview affects what they drive, how they dress, who they associate with, how they spend their money, what they think about other people, and so forth. And here is a vegetarian, and her worldview affects who she associates with and how she spends her money and time and what she thinks about other people, etc. Just like the Amish people. This is a doomsday prepper. Again, what he believes affects who he associates with, how he spends his money and time, and what he thinks about people and issues, etc. And here's a group of jolly, happy musicians from the 40s. No, not really, just that one guy. Actually, these are people who work in Auschwitz, the Nazi death camp. They probably don't look like the monsters that you might expect to see working at a Nazi death camp. Well, maybe they're not monsters. They're just people who have a worldview that justifies genocide, which is, something we're all against. This gentleman here is volunteering at a soup kitchen for the Salvation Army. He's doing this good deed because he's a Christian and he's trying to live a life that God approves of. I don't know what God thinks of this guy doing this, but I think it's great. Even though I don't agree with his worldview, I like his actions that result from his worldview, and so I give it a pass. I hope he's not neglecting other important areas of his life. All right, a bomb exploded on this bus in Israel because of a suicide bomber. We don't know who did it. Could be somebody who's rich or poor, educated or not educated. Could be a Palestinian, but maybe not. All we really know is that it was an extremist Muslim terrorist, probably from Hamas. We know this because they have a worldview that justifies and even encourages this type of behavior. I identify as blank, therefore I think blank. Okay, that's the problem that I'm talking about here. To a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Let's say some people across the world are causing a problem. A military general may think we need to bomb those people. A social worker may think we need to send them some money or support. So we see through our own lens. All right. The problem is we have the Geneva Conventions. All sorts of rules and regulations so that the soldiers are afraid to fight. All right, if you like Obama, you might think this makes sense if you think he said it. But he didn't say it. Trump said it. And now that you know that, if you don't like Trump, then you probably think it doesn't make sense. So there have been a lot of studies on this, and you may or may not agree with a statement depending on who you think said it and whether you like that person or respect that person. Okay, here you can see the black circles and you see the white triangle in the middle. That's because you have seen equilateral triangles all your life, in toys, in picture books, in math books, architecture. If you grew up in the Amazon or somewhere, would you see that white triangle? Probably not. What you see is based on your prior experience. Here's a couple that was going to get married outside in that yard, but they got rained out, so they had to postpone their wedding. 10 years later, they got divorced, and looking back and remembering getting rained out, they thought, oh yeah, we got rained out on our wedding day. We should have known that it wasn't meant to be, wasn't written in the stars, because everything happens for a reason, except when it doesn't. But even then, in hindsight, you can fabricate a reason that will satisfy your belief system. Most worldviews are passed down from authority figures in your life when you are a very young person, and there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. But if you never change your mind about anything, pinch yourself, you may be dead. Alright, I talked about different factors that affect thinking, and now I want to discuss solutions for how we can become better thinkers. So, there was this experiment where researchers brought college kids into an office one by one, and they said, "Thank you for participating in this experiment. I'm going to give you a number, and you have to remember the number, and walk across the lobby then to the office on the other side. There's a lady in there, and you need to tell her what your number is." And so they would listen carefully to their number and walk across the lobby. And as they were passing through, a person in the lobby would say, "Thank you for participating in this study. We have snacks for the participants, and you can either have a piece of chocolate cake or you can have a little bowl of fruit." Well, the people who were given a 4-digit number, 4 digits to remember, they mostly chose the bowl of fruit. And those who were given an 8-digit number mostly chose the chocolate cake. So those who had a smaller number to remember made the better decision. So if your neocortex or whatever is busy going over a large number trying to remember it, then the job of choosing a snack is relegated to your subconscious limbic system or whatever in the brain. It's like the animal instinct saying, "Me eat chocolate cake." If your mind is preoccupied, you don't make good decisions. Some people make decisions with too little information, where others keep gathering information and never get enough information to make a decision. Well, how much information you need depends on the situation, but for the most part, you probably need to be somewhere in between here. Some people have self-confidence that is too high, and then they jump to conclusions or act without thinking things through. Other people have self-confidence that is too low. So we need to have an accurate self-assessment. Some people like tried and true solutions to problems. Others like to try something new all the time. It's probably best to be in the middle somewhere. Just go for the best solution, right? Boy Scouts are trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, cheerful, brave, clean. I think it's a great idea to teach basic moral values to kids. As they get older, you can dig in a little more and ask, like, is there ever a time when you should not be loyal or you should not be brave, etc.? Here's a list of negative emotions: anger, aggressiveness, anxiety, fear, shame, depression, etc. Some people try to improve their ability to deal with negative emotions by doing mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness meditation helps you recognize emotions as they enter your mind and body, and then analyze them and put them in perspective. Here's a pamphlet that I got from an elementary school counselor. She teaches kids to stop, think, and go. So, like, if they get angry, for example, they should pause and think about the best way to deal with it, and then go deal with it. Here is a traditional looking psychotherapy session. The psychologist is helping the woman become aware of her subconscious impulses so that she can consciously and thoughtfully deal with those impulses. The DSM-5 outlines all of the mental health diagnoses. Some mental health issues are just traits on a bell curve or a spectrum, and if you're a couple standard deviations below the mean, then you may have problems with anxiety, depression, ADHD, ODD, whatever. So it's good for us to know what the common mental or emotional pitfalls are, so you can recognize if you're having some trouble, and then you can deal with it. We have developed many solutions to thinking problems. We have cool down periods, like before you buy a gun. We have meditation classes, support groups. You can exercise to address depression. You can get counseling to help you figure out your problems and what to do about them. You can go on medication, change your environment, etc. And there's science. Science helps plants grow, right? We know how much sun and water and what kind of soil is needed for each type of plant. Science helps you grow muscle. You know how much protein to eat, how many reps and sets and how much weight, etc. Science can help you learn the piano. Like, you need to start when you're young. And we now know that, like, Tibetan monks can use meditation to grow their brains in whatever area, like focus or compassion. And we can develop emotional abilities and improve our responses and our thinking. We also know from science that the first decade in life is critical for learning many things. We know there are windows of opportunity for learning things like language or motor development or emotional control, which is just the first 3 years. Just the first 3 years are critical for emotional control. So we need to pay attention to what's going on in the early lives of our children. If you put this kid in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and teach him values like discipline, authority, bravery, loyalty, service, etc., okay, someday he may grow up to be a Marine, or maybe a Nazi if things go wrong. If you buy this girl a kitten and teach her to be compassionate and empathetic, someday she may grow up to be like Mother Teresa, or maybe like a cat hoarder if things go wrong. This is the media bias chart. Many news organizations are placed on this graph after looking at many different criteria, and they're placed more toward the top if they have accurate reporting. If they're more conservative, they're more toward the right, and if they're more liberal, they're more toward the left. So you can see that the extremist news organizations tend to do poorly as far as accuracy. Check your facts. Wikipedia, by the way, is a pretty accurate source. It's more accurate than the old encyclopedias, like Britannica. Don't be afraid to be the only one who says yes when everyone else says no, or vice versa, or have a different opinion. Think of a counterexample when someone makes an assertion. For example, if someone says that all prime numbers are odd, try to think of a prime number that is not odd, but is also prime. Like 2. 2 is even and prime. Test claims. Ask, where is the evidence? Put yourself in the other person's shoes. Try defending something that you don't believe in. This can give you new understanding, new perspective. Know your goals. Don't switch goals to fit a failing initiative. If your work is not accomplishing your goals, then quit wasting your time. Do something different. Weigh your options. Consider the consequences of the choices that you have. Reflect on the decisions that you made and what you did. Did it go well? What did you learn? Okay, let's say you have a new project that you're starting. You want to build a gazebo. And you want it to be a high-quality gazebo. You want it done inexpensively, and you want it done very quickly. Well, you can't have all these things. Quality costs money. Speed costs money. So you have to choose the balance that you will have. As you solve problems in life and improve things, look to do things that are high benefit, low cost. Now, you can do things that are high benefit, high cost, but that's sort of a wash, isn't it? You can do things that are low benefit, low cost. That's also kind of a wash. Low benefit and high cost is probably not worth it. Let's say you see this necklace in a rummage sale and it costs 1 cent, but you don't like it, so you don't buy it. However, this necklace is sitting in a drawer in your house and it's been there for years, but you can't ever throw it away because it's yours, which doesn't make sense. So, if you're cleaning out a closet and you come across some piece of junk that you just can't let go of, think to yourself, if I saw that in a rummage sale for a nickel, would I buy it? That might help you decide. Okay, be aware of misplaced incentives. For example, don't pay lawyers by the hour, or they will just drag things out to get more money. Or if you're a teacher, don't give students more work because they finish their work. Then they'll never finish their work again for you. Misplaced incentives are they're at the root of many of today's problems in society. Alright, I'm going to just run through a bibliography of books here that you might be interested in. The Art of Thinking Clearly by Ralph DeBally. This is all about cognitive biases. The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. This is about moral instincts. Train Your Mind, Change Your Brain. This is about brain plasticity. Some of the science, I think, is dated, but it runs through some great experiments that influenced my thinking. The Believing Brain by Michael Shermer. Again, he runs through a lot of experiments, and you can just draw your own conclusions. Brain Rules. John Medina is a professor that teaches about the brain. It's very research-based and concise. This is a textbook that I have, How the Brain Learns by David Souza. Steven Pinker, How the Mind Works. This is It's not like a user's manual for the mind. It's not that easy. It's about how the mind actually works, like down to the nuts and bolts. As I mentioned before, the DSM-5, cultivating mindfulness in the classroom. This will give you strategies for becoming more mindful. Data analysis. Admittedly, I never got through this, but somebody needs to. Maybe you can. Finally, neurologic, the brain's hidden rationale behind our irrational behavior. Now, if you run across an ad like this, selling snake oil, you'll know what to do. Thank you. My name is David Broman. I'd love to hear any feedback you have. Have a nice day.